The Galactic Academy was a place of wonder. Built on a neutral planet in the center of trade routes, it shined like a jewel of learning and peace. Species from across the galaxy sent their young to study here. They came from desert worlds, ocean planets, gas giant colonies, and gentle green moons. All believed the Academy was the safest place for learning, a temple of knowledge where war and conflict were left behind. But this year, something different happened. A new student was accepted, and the news spread quickly through the long corridors of the Academy. The student was not from a gentle world. He was not from a planet known for beauty or harmony. He was from Earth, a planet officially classified as a death world. The word alone carried weight. Death worlds were rare. Most life-bearing planets in the galaxy had mild climates, safe plants, and soft environments where life grew peacefully. But some worlds were wild and brutal. Storms struck without warning. Predators hunted endlessly, and diseases spread fast. Most species could not imagine surviving there. And yet, humans lived there. Not just lived, they built cities, ships, and civilizations. The announcement of the human student filled classrooms with whispers. "Why would the Academy allow a predator here?" asked a small herbivore with wide, frightened eyes. "Is it not dangerous?" wondered another, a being covered in soft scales. Professors gave calm answers, but even they were unsure. The Council of the Academy had approved the humans' application, stating that diversity was important, that every species had something to teach. Still, unease spread like wind through the Academy's halls. On the day of arrival, students gathered in the main hall, pretending not to stare. Some hid behind their friends, while others leaned forward with excitement. And then he walked in. His name was Ethan Carter. He was tall compared to many species there, though not towering. His build was strong but not monstrous. He had short dark hair, brown eyes, and an expression that was hard to read. What made everyone freeze were his eyes. They were forward-facing, sharp, and direct. The eyes of a hunter. In the galaxy, most intelligent beings had eyes on the sides of their heads, wide to see danger. Ethan's gaze was narrow, focused. When he looked around the room, the students shivered. It was not anger in his eyes. It was not cruelty. It was simply awareness. For a long moment, silence ruled the hall. Even the buzzing translation drones seemed quiet. Then Ethan smiled. It was not the tooth-bearing snarl of an animal, but a warm, human smile. "Hello," he said, his voice calm, translated into dozens of languages at once. "I am Ethan. I am glad to be here." Some students relaxed a little, though the tension still lingered. His voice was not harsh, but steady. The professor in charge, a tall insectoid with crystal-like wings, cleared their throat. "Welcome, Student Carter. Please take your seat." Ethan nodded and walked through the rows. Aliens shifted aside, some leaning away nervously. He did not seem offended. He simply sat, placed his bag at his feet, and waited for the lesson. The class began, but attention kept drifting to the human. Some whispered behind their hands. Others took secret notes, recording his movements. To them, every small thing mattered. How he blinked, how he breathed, how he sat. Everything was new. When the lecture ended, Ethan stood and walked calmly out of the room. The students whispered louder. Later that day at the cafeteria, the whispers grew again. The Academy food hall served meals for every biology: plants, proteins, liquids, even mineral-rich meals for silicon-based species. Ethan stood in line like everyone else, studying the menu. A group of students watched him closely. One of them, a small feathered alien with bright blue eyes, gathered courage and approached. "Excuse me," they said nervously. "Is it true that humans eat meat?" The hall grew silent again. Everyone waited. Ethan tilted his head slightly, then answered with honesty. "Yes, but not only meat. We eat many things: plants, grains, fruits. Our bodies are flexible." He gave a gentle shrug. "Here, I will eat what is safe and provided you do not need to worry." The student nodded quickly and stepped back. Whispers grew louder than ever. Some were horrified, others fascinated. Omnivores were rare enough, Predators were even rarer. A species that was both. That was something the galaxy hardly knew how to process. But Ethan did not seem troubled. He took a simple meal of grains and vegetables, sat at an empty table, and ate slowly. At night in their dormitories, the students of the academy talked. "He looks dangerous." "Did you see his teeth?" He smiled, but there were sharp edges. He was polite. More polite than some of us. Still, he comes from a death world. Fear and curiosity battled inside their minds. The next day, in history class, Ethan raised his hand and asked a question about interstellar treaties. His voice was calm, his tone respectful. The professor answered, surprised at the depth of his interest. After class, one of the braver students, a tall reptilian named Sarge, walked up to him. "You ask many questions," she said. "Why?" Ethan smiled again, a softer one this time. "Because I want to learn. That is why I came here." Sarge tilted her head. "Most of us came because our governments told us, or our families pushed us. You actually want to?" "Yes," Ethan replied simply. "On Earth, survival is never guaranteed. Every day you must fight the world itself. Storms, predators, sickness. We learn early that knowledge is survival. If I do not learn, I waste the chance my people gave me." His words carried weight. Sarge did not know how to respond, but she felt something shift in her thoughts. Perhaps the human was not just a predator. Perhaps he was more. Days turned into weeks. Ethan kept attending classes, always polite, always focused. He joined group projects, worked hard, and never complained. Slowly, the whispers began to change. "He is not so frightening. He listens when you talk. He works harder than anyone." But fear did not vanish. Some students still avoided him. Some still stared at his eyes and saw danger. Others saw strength and wondered what it meant to have a human among them. Then came the first test of his presence. In biology class, the professor displayed images of various creatures from different worlds: herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. The subject was adaptation. The professor pointed at Ethan and asked, "Human, can you explain how your kind survived on a death world?" The room went silent again. All eyes turned to him. Ethan did not rush his answer. He looked around at the waiting faces, then spoke clearly. "We survived because we had no choice. The world was dangerous, yes, but we learned to work together. Alone, we are weak. Together, we are strong. We hunted, yes, but we also built homes, made tools, healed each other. My people are predators, but also protectors. We are both." His words left the room in silence once more, but this time it was not fear that filled the air. It was thought. It was wonder. For the first time, some of the students began to see beyond the title of Deathworlder. They began to see the human, and Ethan, sitting calmly at his desk, only gave a small smile. The Galactic Academy had always been a place where differences were celebrated, but with Ethan's arrival, those differences suddenly felt sharper. Every time he walked into a classroom, heads turned. Some looked curious, others cautious. A few looked outright afraid. At first, Ethan pretended not to notice. He had grown up with the idea that humans were considered unusual, even threatening, in the wider galaxy. His teachers back on Earth had warned him, "They will see you as a predator. Show them you can be more." But he could not change his nature. His eyes stayed sharp, his movement steady, his presence commanding. No matter how kindly he smiled or how politely he spoke, others always seemed to notice the instinctive aura of danger that clung to him. That week, the Academy began a new series of classes in biology and self-defense. Both subjects would test Ethan's place among the students more than any lecture ever could. The biology hall was filled with strange smells and sounds. The professor, a long-bodied aquatic being that moved gracefully with the help of hovering water spheres, began the lesson on apex predators. Images of alien creatures flickered on the hollow display. Students gasped at the sight of long fangs, venom sacs, claws, and armored scales. The professor explained how apex predators shaped their ecosystems, how prey species adapted to survive, and how balance was maintained. Then, the professor turned toward Ethan. "Student Carter," they said, their watery voice echoing through the translation drones. Your world is also home to predators, is it not? The entire class shifted in their seats, waiting. Some leaned forward with morbid fascination. Others looked ready to bolt. Ethan kept his tone calm. Yes, Professor. My world has many predators. Some are large, some small. Some hunt with claws, others with venom, others with speed. But humans learned not only to fear them, we learned to adapt. A small herbivorous student, barely half Ethan's height, raised a trembling hand. But if your world was so dangerous, how did your species survive? You are not the largest or the strongest or the fastest. Shouldn't you have been hunted to extinction? Whispers filled the hall. The question was blunt but honest. Ethan gave a slight nod. You are right. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. But we are clever. We work together. Where a predator has teeth, we build spears. Where a storm destroys, we build shelter. Where sickness spreads, we find cures. Alone, one human is weak. Together, we become something more. The room fell silent. For a moment, no one knew whether to admire his answer or fear it. Then the herbivore student whispered softly, You are predators who learn to fight the world itself. Ethan did not deny it. He only looked down at his desk, silent once more. Later that day came the combat training session. The training field was a wide-open dome with soft floors and safety barriers. It was not meant for war, but for teaching students basic survival and self-defense. Most species used light sparring techniques, energy shields, or small non-lethal drones. Ethan stepped onto the floor with the others. His movements were relaxed, but his focus was sharp. The instructor, a massive insectoid with 4 arms, gave the command for warm-ups. Students paired off. Ethan found himself facing Serac, the reptilian student who had spoken to him earlier in history class. She looked at him carefully, her scales shimmering under the lights. You do not need to hold back, she said. I want to see what a Deathworlder can do. Ethan hesitated. He had been warned again and again, never show too much. But he also knew that refusing would only make things worse. So he nodded. All right. Just remember, I will not harm you. The spar began. Serac lunged forward, her claws extended in a controlled strike. Ethan moved to the side with surprising speed. He did not counterattack immediately. He studied her movements, waited, and then lightly tapped her arm to show where he could have struck. The instructor called, Continue. Serac tried again, faster this time. Ethan dodged again, but this time he caught her arm, twisted gently and lowered her to the floor without force. She was pinned before she understood what had happened. Gasps echoed from the watching students. The instructor's eyes glowed with interest. Human reflexes. Efficient. Release her. Ethan stepped back quickly, offering Serac his hand. She accepted it, her expression caught between surprise and respect. You fight like a predator, she said quietly. Not wild, not brutal, controlled. Ethan gave a small smile. That is what makes us dangerous. We do not fight for hunger. We fight to win. The word spread quickly through the academy like sparks in dry grass. Students whispered in hallways and cafeterias. Some were amazed. Others were unsettled. A few were frightened more than ever. One evening in the student dormitory, a group gathered to talk about Ethan. He is too dangerous. Did you see how he moved? No normal species reacts like that. But he did not hurt her. He was careful. Careful now, perhaps. But what if he loses control? I think he is not dangerous because he wants to harm us. He is dangerous because he knows how not to. The debate continued long into the night. The next morning, Ethan walked into the cafeteria again. This time, the room did not fall into fearful silence. Instead, a group of curious students approached him. One asked, Human Ethan, do you ever get afraid? Ethan paused. The question was so simple yet so deep. Yes, he admitted. Of course. On Earth, fear is normal. Fear keeps you alive. But we learn not to let fear control us. Another student leaned forward. And when you are afraid, what do you do? He smiled faintly. We face it. Step by step. Together if we can. The students exchanged glances. For the first time, they saw not just a predator but a companion who understood fear as they did. But not everyone was convinced. A group of older students, from a species known for their caution, spoke in hushed tones to the professors. This human should not be here, they argued. He unsettles everyone. His presence is disruptive. What happens if he becomes violent? The professors considered their words carefully, but gave no immediate answer. They had seen Ethan's discipline. They had also seen the fear he caused. The academy stood at a delicate balance. One student's nature could shift the harmony of the entire place. That night, as Ethan lay awake in his dorm, he thought about the stares, the whispers and the questions. He had known it would be difficult, but he had hoped his actions would prove his intentions sooner. Instead, every demonstration of strength seemed to make him both respected and feared. He whispered to himself in the quiet darkness, "How do I show them I am more than a predator?" But the answer did not come. In the days that followed, lessons continued. Ethan kept learning, kept working, kept smiling, but the tension lingered. Some students began to follow him closely, curious to learn from him. Others avoided him more than ever. The divide was growing, and though Ethan tried to stay calm, deep down he wondered, how long before this fragile balance would break? Because one truth could not be hidden forever. Humans were predators, and predators, in the eyes of the galaxy, were never just students. They were something else entirely. The Galactic Academy was alive with excitement. The wide halls were filled with bright banners, and students hurried from one room to another, carrying strange objects and samples from their homeworlds. It was the day of the cultural demonstration, an event held every year where each species showed something special from their world. Art, music, traditions, or even creatures that represented their home. For many students, it was their favorite day. They could share their pride and identity with others, and they could see wonders from across the galaxy without leaving the academy. This year, however, there was more curiosity than usual. Whispers followed one question: what will the human bring? Some imagined dangerous weapons. Others thought of wild stories about Earth's predators. Many simply wondered if Ethan would choose something peaceful, to avoid frightening everyone again. The main hall was transformed into a festival ground. Booths lined the sides, each glowing with lights and filled with strange sights. One ocean-dwelling student sang a haunting melody while water floated around them like living ribbons. A desert-born student displayed sand crystals that shimmered with inner fire. Another showed a delicate plant that glowed softly in the dark, representing harmony from their world. Students and professors walked from booth to booth, applauding politely. Then in the center, one reptilian student named Koresh prepared his demonstration. He was from a world where venomous creatures ruled, and he had brought one such specimen inside a secure container. The creature was long and scaled, its body marked with bright warning colors. Small but deadly, its venom was known to paralyze larger beings instantly. "This," Koresh announced proudly, "is a creature from my world. It is feared, respected, and studied for its survival skills." The students leaned closer to look, fascinated but wary. The container was supposed to be secure, but fate had other plans. A sudden loud click echoed through the hall. One of the container locks failed. With shocking speed, the small predator slipped through the gap and darted across the floor. Chaos erupted. Students screamed and stumbled back. Some species froze in instinctive terror. Others bolted for the exits, pushing past their classmates. Even Koresh cried out, his proud display turning into panic as he realized the creature's venom was dangerous to nearly everyone in the room. The professors shouted for calm, but fear spread too fast. The predator skittered across the floor, its bright colors flashing. It stopped in the middle of the room, tongue flicking, ready to strike. Ethan was the only one who moved toward it. He did not hesitate. His eyes locked on the creature, every muscle in his body focused. His heart pounded, but not with panic, with sharp clarity. He had seen danger like this before. On Earth, such threats were common. He glanced around quickly. No weapons, no tools, only what was available. His hand darted out, grabbing a heavy cloth from one of the booths. The predator hissed and lunged. Ethan shifted sideways, faster than most students could follow. With one swift motion, he threw the cloth over the creature and pressed it down, pinning it safely without crushing it. The creature thrashed under the cover, but Ethan's grip was firm. Silence fell over the hall. All eyes were on the human crouched calmly on the floor, holding the dangerous alien like it was nothing more than an unruly pet. After a few tense moments, Koresh's professor rushed forward with a containment field. Together they secured the predator back into its container. Only then did Ethan release the cloth and step back. The hall remained silent. Dozens of alien eyes stared at him, Some wide with shock, some with awe, some with fear. Ethan brushed his hands off calmly and looked around. "No one is hurt," he said simply. The silence broke into a storm of whispers. He didn't run. He faced it directly. He moved like a hunter. No, not like a hunter, like a protector. Koresh, still shaken, approached Ethan slowly. His voice trembled. "Why did you do that? You could have been bitten." The venom. Ethan shrugged lightly. "On Earth, we deal with creatures like this often. If I ran, someone else might have been hurt. It was safer this way." Koresh stared at him in disbelief. "Safer? You faced it with your bare hands." Ethan's calm gaze did not waver. "Sometimes you don't get to choose safe. You only choose what you can live with." The professors whispered among themselves, clearly unsettled but also impressed. Few students would have dared such an act. Fewer still would have succeeded. The demonstration continued, but the mood of the day had changed. Everywhere Ethan went, eyes followed him. Some were filled with gratitude, some with admiration, but many with something deeper, a growing realization. This human had not only the instincts of a predator, but the courage to use them with control. That evening in the dormitory, students gathered again to discuss what they had seen. I froze. I couldn't even move. I ran. I'm ashamed, but I ran. The human, he didn't even flinch. It was like he had done this before. Maybe he has. His world is full of predators. One student whispered, "We keep calling him a predator, but maybe that's not the right word." Another leaned forward. "Then what is he?" The first student hesitated, then answered softly, "A hunter." The word spread quickly. The next day, Ethan noticed the change. Students looked at him differently, some with fear, some with deep respect. When he entered classrooms, conversations stopped not in nervousness, but in anticipation. Sirach, the reptilian student he had sparred with, approached him during break. "You didn't hesitate yesterday," she said. "That was not normal. Most species, even strong ones, would have frozen." Ethan gave her a small smile. It wasn't bravery. It was instinct. On Earth, if you freeze, you die. So we learn to act. Sirach studied him for a long time, then nodded. "That is why they call you Hunter now." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Hunter?" "Yes," she replied. "A predator kills because it must. A hunter chooses when and how. You are not wild. You are deliberate. That is more frightening than any predator." Ethan didn't know what to say. The word hunter sounded heavy, filled with meaning he wasn't sure he wanted. But he also knew she was right. Over the following days, whispers of the human hunter spread across the academy. Some feared what it meant to have such a being among them. Others admired the control, the courage, the skill. A few even approached him asking for advice on how to stay calm under pressure. For the first time, Ethan began to feel not just like an outsider, but like someone others looked to, though whether in fear or respect, he could not yet tell. Still, deep in his heart, he knew one thing. The balance was changing, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were not just another species from another world. They were something else entirely. The name spread faster than Ethan expected. In the days after the Predator incident, students no longer called him just the human. Now in quiet voices and serious tones they whispered another title, the Hunter. At first, Ethan thought little of it. He went to his classes, ate his meals, and worked on his projects the same as before. But he noticed how eyes followed him more than ever. Some glances carried admiration, others deep suspicion. The word hunter carried both respect and fear, and though Ethan remained polite, calm, and careful, he realized the new name made the divide sharper. Some students now approached him with questions, wanting to learn from him. Others avoided him entirely, as if one wrong move would trigger his instincts. He began to feel the weight of his presence. One afternoon, in the common hall, a group of younger students huddled together. Ethan overheard their whispers as he passed. They say humans can smell fear. They say they never stop chasing prey once they see it. They say if you anger him, he will. Ethan turned suddenly and the students froze. His gaze met theirs, sharp and direct. They all trembled until he did something unexpected. He smiled gently. "You don't need to whisper," he said. "If you want to know something, you can ask me." The students hesitated. One small bird-like alien with colorful feathers raised a trembling wing. "Is it true? Do humans hunt other intelligent beings?" The question stung Ethan. He took a slow breath before answering. No, that is not who we are. We fight predators, we fight the world, sometimes even each other, but we do not hunt our friends. The young aliens lowered their eyes, ashamed of their assumption. Ethan gave them a nod and walked away. But the words remained in his mind. Later, during history class, the subject turned to the great wars of the galaxy. The professor explained how most species eventually found peace after terrible conflicts. The lesson ended with a note about diplomacy and treaties. At the end, one older student raised a hand and asked loudly, "What about the human wars? Are they not known for endless fighting?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to Ethan again. The professor hesitated, then gave Ethan the chance to answer. Ethan stood slowly. Yes, we fought wars, many. Sometimes for land, sometimes for resources, sometimes for reasons we don't even understand anymore. We are not proud of it. But from those wars we learned. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many students as he could. We learned how much pain war causes. We learned the value of peace. We learned that survival alone is not enough. Living with purpose, building connections, protecting each other. That is what matters. We are not just fighters. We are builders, healers, explorers. We carry both shadows and light. His voice was steady, his words simple, but they touched something deep. The class remained silent long after he sat down. That evening, some of the students who once avoided him approached instead. A gentle-scaled alien asked, "Can you tell us more about your explorers?" Another asked, "What is it like to live on a world where storms destroy homes yet you still rebuild?" Ethan spoke softly, sharing stories of humans sailing across oceans, climbing mountains, and curing diseases. He told them about how humans often argued and disagreed, but still managed to build civilizations together. The students listened with wide eyes. Slowly, suspicion was replaced with curiosity. The change did not go unnoticed. Instructors began to see groups of aliens gathering around Ethan during breaks, listening to him explain human endurance, medicine, or inventions. Some even asked him to show them simple exercises for strength and focus. One day, Sarge joined the group during a training session. "Teach me how you stayed calm with the predator," she asked. Ethan nodded and showed them breathing techniques, the way his people learn to steady their nerves in dangerous situations. "You see," he explained, "our fear is strong, but we do not hide from it. We use it to sharpen our senses. Fear tells us to move, to think, to survive. That is why we train, to control it instead of letting it control us." The students practiced, clumsy at first, but determined. Some laughed at their own mistakes. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was not just being observed as a strange creature, but accepted as a teacher. Yet not everyone welcomed this change. A group of cautious students, the same ones who had complained before, grew restless. They argued that Ethan was influencing the academy too much. "He is teaching them dangerous ways," they said to the professors. "Humans are unpredictable. He may turn them into predators too." The professors listened carefully but did not agree. The students choose to learn. Knowledge is not danger by itself. Still, the unease lingered. Ethan knew he would never convince everyone. One night, Sarge joined Ethan on the balcony overlooking the academy gardens. The stars above were bright, reflecting on the silver leaves of the alien plants below. "You are changing things here," she said quietly. Ethan looked at her, puzzled. "Changing?" "Yes," she continued. "Before you came, we thought humans were only predators. Now some see you as a protector, others as a teacher. Some are still afraid, but no one sees you the same as before." Ethan sighed. "I didn't come here to change anything. I only wanted to learn." Sarge's golden eyes glowed in the starlight. "That is why you change things. Because you do not try to. You simply show what you are." Ethan gave a small smile. "And what am I?" She tilted her head. "A hunter, yes, but not of prey. A hunter of knowledge. A hunter of survival. A hunter of connection." The words stayed with him long after she left. The academy began to shift. Where once Ethan's presence had caused fear, now curiosity bloomed. Students asked for his help in projects, invited him to their cultural discussions, and even shared meals with him. The nickname Hunter remained, but its meaning was changing. It no longer meant just danger. It meant determination, awareness, and guidance. One day, during a group discussion in philosophy class, a timid student asked, "Ethan, do you believe humans are special?" The question caught him off guard. He thought carefully before answering. No, we are not special. We are just stubborn. We refuse to give up no matter how hard the world is. That is why we survive. That is why we keep trying. The class grew quiet, and then one student whispered, "Maybe that is what makes you special." That evening, Ethan sat alone for a while, thinking about everything that had happened since his arrival. He had been feared as a predator, respected as a hunter, and slowly accepted as something more. But deep down he knew the real test had not yet come. The academy was a place of peace. It was easy to speak of endurance and bravery here, but the galaxy was not always so kind, and someday he suspected they would all learn what it truly meant to have a human among them. The academy had grown quieter in the weeks after Ethan's reputation shifted. Where once there had been whispers of fear, now there was open curiosity. Students spoke to him, studied with him, even trained under his guidance. But peace never lasted long. One evening, as the students gathered in the common hall, an emergency alarm cut through the building. The lights dimmed red and a mechanical voice echoed, "Warning. Perimeter breach detected. All students remain inside. Security response in progress." The hall filled with nervous chatter. Most of the young aliens had never experienced a real emergency. Their academy was deep within safe territory, far from war zones. Ethan stood still, his eyes sharp. He had heard alarms like this before, back on Earth, during storms, during raids, during times when survival was uncertain. Instinct told him this was no drill. Minutes later, a professor entered the hall, his expression grim. "Listen carefully. A pack of feral predators has entered the outer grounds. Security is holding them back, but one group of students is trapped in the East Wing. We must rescue them before the predators break through." The professor's voice shook. Even teachers here were not used to real danger. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward. "I'll go." The hall went silent. Every eye turned to him. "You?" the professor asked. "It is too dangerous. They won't make it if we wait too long," Ethan replied calmly. "I know how to move through danger. Let me." For a moment, the professor looked uncertain, but then he nodded. "Very well. You will not go alone. Take 2 others. We cannot risk losing more." Immediately, Sarge stepped forward. "I will go with him." Another student, the feathered alien from before, raised a trembling wing. "And I will too." The professor hesitated but finally allowed it. "Go quickly. Bring them back." The 3 of them slipped out through a side corridor. The halls of the academy were dim and tense, shadows stretching long under the red lights. In the distance, a low growl echoed. Sarge whispered, "Ethan, what do we do if we meet them?" "Stay close." "Stay quiet. Don't run unless I tell you. Predators chase fleeing prey. If we face them together." The others nodded nervously. They reached the East Wing. The door was sealed, and behind it, muffled cries could be heard. The trapped students were panicked. Ethan knelt, examining the lock. "It's jammed. We'll need a distraction to draw the predators away before we open it." As if summoned by his words, a heavy snarl echoed down the corridor. Out of the shadows stepped a predator unlike the one from the classroom. This one was larger, with sleek muscles, glowing eyes, and claws that scraped the floor. The feathered student froze in terror. Sarge pulled him back. Ethan stepped forward. The predator lowered itself, ready to strike. Ethan did not move. His gaze locked with the creature's. His heartbeat quickened, but his breath stayed steady. Every instinct screamed at him to fight or flee, but he held firm. Then in a sharp motion, he stomped the floor and shouted. The sound rang through the hall, loud and commanding. The predator flinched, startled. "Now!" Ethan shouted. Sarge rushed to the door, working with the feathered student to open it. Ethan kept the predator's eyes on him, moving slightly to the side, forcing its attention. The predator paced, growling, but hesitated. It sensed something different in Ethan, something not like prey. Finally, with a furious snarl, it lunged. Ethan sidestepped quickly, grabbing a loose metal bar from the wall. With both hands, he struck the predator's flank. It yelped in pain but kept coming. This was no longer about scaring it away. It was a fight, the hall filled with chaos. Ethan swung the bar, blocking claws, striking at its head and shoulders. His movements were sharp, efficient, born from a lifetime on a dangerous world. The predator snapped at him, its teeth grazing his sleeve. He gritted his teeth, refusing to give ground. Each time it lunged, he struck back harder. Finally, with a desperate roar, he drove the metal bar into the wall, pinning the predator's leg for a moment. The creature howled, struggling to free itself. "Go!" Ethan shouted. The trapped students burst from the door, running down the hall. Sarah guided them, her eyes wide with both fear and respect. But Ethan did not run. He stood between the predator and the fleeing students, refusing to move until the last one was safe. Only then did he back away, step by step until he was the last in the corridor. The predator tore free, snarling, but by then security arrived. Energy barriers flared and the creature was forced back. The students returned to the hall, shaken but alive. Professors checked each one, ensuring no one was injured. When Ethan finally stepped inside, covered in dust and sweat, the hall erupted in silence. Everyone stared at him. The professor spoke first. "You faced the predator?" Ethan nodded simply. "Yes, but I did not face it alone. Sirach and the others helped. We all did what we had to." The rescued students rushed forward, thanking him with trembling voices. Some even bowed their heads in respect. For the first time, the fear in the room was gone. In its place was awe. That night, the academy gathered for a meeting. The headmaster himself addressed the students. "Today," he said, "we learned something important. We saw danger and we saw courage. But above all, we saw truth." He turned to Ethan. "Many believed humans were only predators, dangerous, uncontrollable. But today, Ethan showed us what it truly means to be human. Not just strength, not just fearlessness, but the will to protect, even at risk to himself." The room filled with quiet murmurs. Many nodded in agreement. The headmaster continued. "The galaxy has many kinds of strength, but the human strength is unique. They endure, they adapt, and they protect." Later, when the crowd dispersed, Sirach found Ethan standing outside under the stars. "You were ready to face it alone," she said softly. "I was ready to make sure you all got away," Ethan corrected. "That is what matters." She studied him for a long moment. Then she said, "The galaxy will not forget this. You broke the stereotype. They will not call you just a hunter anymore." Ethan smiled faintly. "What will they call me then?" She answered simply, "Human." In the days that followed, the academy's atmosphere shifted. Students no longer whispered in fear. Instead, they approached Ethan openly, eager to learn, to train, to share. The professors, too, treated him differently. Not as a subject of study, but as a colleague, someone whose wisdom was worth hearing. And though Ethan remained humble, he could not deny the truth. He had left an impression. The predator had tested him. And through that test, the Academy had seen what it meant to come from a death world, and why humanity's place in the galaxy was never to be underestimated. That night, as he lay in his room, Ethan thought of home. Earth was far away, filled with its storms, its dangers, its endless challenges, but it was also filled with resilience, creativity, and hope. He smiled to himself. "They thought they brought a predator to class," he whispered. "But maybe they brought something more." With that thought, he closed his eyes, ready for whatever came next.